This is going to be a beginner's guide on how to convert images from colour to black and white using Adobe Photoshop. I will also be covering a technique commonly called colour popping, which is simply making an image black and white but leaving a very specific element in colour. This technique isn't new and has been used for decades. If you choose to implement this into your work, think really carefully about how and what you're choosing to leave in colour and why you're choosing to make this particular element stand out. So in this video we're going to be using layers and layer masks in Photoshop. If you aren't confident using these, then please see my previous videos covering these tutorials. Links to these will come up on the video now. I'll also post a link to them in the description below for you. You can also click the link below to go straight to the channel homepage and see all the different videos I have to offer. So whenever we want to create a black and white image, we first need a source image to work from. The best way to do this is to have your photo in colour first. There is a very good reason for ignoring the built-in black and white modes that exist on your phone or camera. And that's control. It gives us the ability to fine-tune the different tones in the end product. So first we want to have our image open in Photoshop, straight out the camera, or with a few edits. That doesn't really matter. If you want to do a few tweaks to your color image before we start the black and white conversion, that's absolutely fine, but we're not going to cover that right now. We're going to go straight into making the image black and white. And there's a few different ways you can do that in Photoshop. I'm going to show you two different ways and why you might want to choose one over the other. The first way, probably the simplest way, is to move your mouse over to the top left where it says image, and then scroll down to adjustments, and then black and white. What we can see there is our image has gone straight into black and white, but it's brought us up a little dialog box with lots of different colours listed with different values in percentages. And this is referring back to what I said before about shooting your images in colour. If we had shot our image in black and white, we wouldn't be able to use these adjusters. But because we've shot our image in colour, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel that for a second. I'm going to zoom into the background where we have blues in the sky. And I'm going to go back to the same thing, image, adjustments, black and white. And then you can see the blue slider here. If I start to adjust this, you can see those tones in the background are getting denser, they're getting darker, because I'm putting the blues down to the darker end of the slider. If I put them to the lighter end of the slider, they would get lighter. And that will correspond to every colour you have within your image. So if you have more reds in your image or more yellows in your image, then the same will apply. And you want to use these sliders in conjunction with each other to get a mix of tones that you're happy with. So I'm just going to zoom out of that one again. So we go back there, image, adjustments, black and white, and then we can tweak the different tones to our liking. The best way to approach this to start with is to experiment with the sliders. Slide them up, slide them down, see how your image responds. You can see there the blues affect the sky in this one quite dramatically. But some sliders might not actually do much for your image, and that might just mean that there aren't those particular colours in your image. Once we're happy with that, we can press OK, and that effect is applied. You can then just save that image and you're done, essentially. But we can go a step further. We can do this in a different way. So instead of going up to the top and selecting image, we're going to go all the way to the opposite side, bottom right, and we're going to go to create new fill or adjustment layer. Remember, anything in Photoshop, if you're not sure what it is, hover your mouse over and it will tell you. So it's this little icon down here, create new fill or adjustment layer. And you can see many of the same options we had under the previous menu come up here, including black and white. But the difference here is when we add that, it comes up as a separate layer. This is going to give us even more control if we want to change anything or reorder our layers in any way. And that will again refer back to one of those previous videos about layers and layer masks that I covered before. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about the layers at the moment. It's doing the same thing. You still have these sliders that like you had before. It's the same adjustment, but it's adding it as a separate layer. So what that means is I can turn that layer on and off. I can add layer masks to that layer. I can reorder the layer. I can delete the layer if I want to. The way we did it before, we applied the effect directly to the background layer. So it's destructive. This way is non-destructive. So if you're going to do this, I would recommend this method. If you need to get back into the adjusting panel, you can double click on this icon here and the adjustment will come back up and you can tweak it. Now for color popping. This is my source image. This is what I'm going to use for the demonstration. So what we want to do is we want to do the same thing we just did. We want to add the black and white adjustment layer like this. I'm going to give it a quick tweak. Okay, so we want to make sure we have our black and white layer selected. This layer automatically has a layer mask. That's the white square that's selected. That is an automatic thing that happens when you create a new fill or adjustment layer. The fact that it's white means that we can see our effect. Again, if you need to have a refresh on layer masks, please see the video linked below. What we need to do is to be able to bring out the color that's on the background layer below that layer. So the color's still there, as you can see from the background layer, but we just can't see it at the moment. I can demonstrate that by turning off the black and white layer and turning it back on again. So what we want to do is let that color come through the black and white layer. The way we do this is simply painting a black brush onto the black and white layer mask. So we want to make sure we have black selected. You can do that by double clicking on your foreground color over here. Make sure it's black. Keyboard shortcut for that is X. You can toggle between white and black. That's quite a handy one. Make sure we have a normal brush selected. Just here. You can right click anywhere on your screen, on your picture rather, to change the size of your brush. What we can then do is zoom in to the areas of the image we want to make color. And simply brushing the black brush over those areas will allow us to do that. And it's honestly as simple as that. Obviously, if you use the brush method like this, you need to be quite neat and tidy when it comes to coming up to the edges. Now, if you find that difficult, look at your brush settings. If your hardness is all the way down to 0, that means you have a very soft edge to your brush. If we have the hardness raised slightly, that creates a much harder line. So that might be useful when coming up to edges. And you can change that whenever you want. So from this stage, all we need to do is fill in all of the color we want to stand out from the black and white with that brush. And there we have our finished picture. Now, when you're doing this with this method, what you might find is you're going over the edges quite a lot into an area you want to keep black and white. So the quick and easy way to do this as you're working, so if we look here and we say, I've made a mistake and I've gone over the edge and I don't want to, keep your finger on X on the keyboard to switch between black and white. Black is going to allow us to add color. But if we press X to white, that's going to almost act as our eraser. So when you're working, what you can do is keep your finger on X on the keyboard. As you're painting, you can quick and easily switch between the two, and that will speed up things for you. Once you're happy with your image and you're finished, what you can do is right click on any of the layers. You can click flatten image, and that will make that image flat without any layers, which you can then save like this. File, save as. I'm just going to choose my desktop. Make sure your file type is saving as a JPEG. Now mine, as you can see, is a TIFF. Yours probably won't be. Yours probably will already be a JPEG. But just make sure anyway that it is a JPEG. Now what you want to do here, really important, is give it a new name. Especially if you're saving in the same location as the original image. Just give it a name. Something like that will be fine. What that makes sure is that it's not saving over the original. If you save your image with the same name as the original, chances are it will save over the top of it, deleting your original color image. So make sure you give it a new name, and that's good for organizational purposes anyway, so you know what things are. I'm going to click save, make sure your quality is at maximum, and then click OK. That is now finished.